us his time. And as people are coming through, they will come through. Most of our Tinker Talks, if you haven't been here before, super laid back, right? We talk about the good, the bad, the cringy, of all the things, right? So whether it's operations focused or marketing focused, that is what we're doing today. So I am gonna just hog Jonathan for like the next 10 minutes and ask him questions, and then I'm gonna open it up to the group, if that is cool. All right, Jonathan. Podcasting. And I think, yeah, we put his bio, he's helped, you can kind of like bio more yourself. Like we put it in the calendar invite and I sent it to everyone on Slack today so they know who you are. What are my questions around podcasting? I have a question about podcasting, and it's going to come down to logistics. When everyone's like, oh my God, you should do a podcast. And I'm like, it's so much work. So much work. Like it is a whole business just to have a podcast. And what if you are someone who is an owner and you are starting a podcast, right? And then I'll ask the same question, like if you're doing podcasts for clients, because I think these are two different pertinent use cases. Like what kind of team do you think is involved in podcasting, right? And what have you seen in terms of advancements to make like post-production, chopping up content, things like that easier? Like I know right now there's a bunch of AI tools, which you and I have geeked out about. Like, is there anything that you like to make the workflow go more efficient? Because we're just gonna start with a super easy question, right? That's where we're gonna go here. Just like, let's get into the weeds of it. So yeah, Jonathan, and if you want to add anything else before you start with the questions, go for it.
Cool. Okay, so just to kind of paraphrase back, we have a double question there. Essentially, the first part is around the team. Like what kind of resources, as a business owner starting a show, do you feel like you like? What would be basically my suggestion around who to think of first? Like how many people should you have, and so forth? How to think about that, and then secondly, around the are there any sort of workflows or tools that you've found helps with the kind of 80-20 of podcast production?
Absolutely.
That'd be a good sort of way to summarize that. Yeah,
yes,
okay, cool.
You got me.
All right. So I think team-wise, I think there's there are different ways of looking at this. A lot of it is going to be dependent on sort of budget. I would say I run a service, right? So we help people who just don't want to deal with figuring out how do we upload this thing and where does it go and how does it get distributed and all that sort of thing. Some people just like that, if you're running a business and it's basically like you have people who it's worth actually them figuring that stuff out and you want them to figure it out, or you're just that way inclined. Is it the best use of your time? Maybe not. But basically, most of the clients that we deal with, they've just come to that conclusion. They're like, we know how much effort this is going to take. We just want sort of managed service that just deals with all the tricky parts and all the things that are going to take away our time from the things that we're good at. And we should be focusing our time and energy, the content itself. Now, I think that's kind of applicable in most cases, really. If you are a business, you're running a business, you're not running yes, the podcast is part of your content strategy and so on, but it's not your bread and butter. And so the more that you can do in order to just get those things off the plate of yourself, your team members who have got other things going on, the better. And I think there are different approaches you can take depending on what level of budget or resource you have accessible to you. So kind of the people that the kind of clients that we work with tend to be sort of like brands, pretty established businesses, sort of like venture-backed tech companies. We're working with like New York Marathon, we're working with the university, and so they're able to tap into pretty significant budgets to afford sort of a premium level of service. When I think it comes to more sort of like the mid-level, sort of business owner. I also still, would recommend sort of looking at what kinds of podcast production services are out there who've done hundreds of show launches, that have processes down, that know what it takes to get just your initial idea or concept through to fruition. I would say there are varying degrees of those services. Like we offer a service like this, but it's significantly different than just like pure podcast editing, which I think a lot of the services you'll find just address that. There are others that are more just address very different specific areas. And so sometimes it's industry specific. I know a chap who runs a service that's just for legal firms. There's a podcast service for legal firms. Imagine that. There's so Legal Pods. You should check it out if you run a legal service or anyone does a legal service. That's your podcast service for. And he's brilliant, because he just understands the legal profession inside. He used to be a lawyer himself, and then he got into the podcasting. But he really understands, everyone in the legal profession like inside out. Fantastic. Another example, this. Brittany, I think her second name is Felix. She does like podcasting for coaches. She has a show called Podcasting for Coaches. Again, if you're a coach, and it tends to skew more, I would say, on the female sort of coaching side. Like if you're a female coach, that is probably going to be one of your best options. Even if and they all these kind of different services, they have different ways of packaging them up. Sometimes I think Brittany, she has like various ways, like she's got like a sort of premium level service, and then she's kind of got like small sort of course offerings and so forth. But either way, like all these kind of service providers, if they don't offer something as part of that package, they'll be able to at least say like, okay, here's where you find your podcast editors. And say, for example, I would also say, to me, the massively time consuming part is the podcast editing and production. If anyone's actually ever tried to do this themselves, they know it is a pain in the butt. Yeah, there you go. Got married.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I'm like, it's a whole business.
Yeah. It's kind of fun though. I mean, if you're an audio nerd and geek and you're like, oh, let's have a little jingle over there. And sometimes it's good to know a little bit about that, to just understand what's involved. So when your podcast editor says, oh, I noticed that you're picking and you're distorting over here, you actually know what he's talking about, and you actually hear the nuances in that, and you can go, oh, okay, this is how I need to do a better job of recording, or you can go into like, so what kind of segueing a little bit into the tool side of things, like I would say one of the big, for me, like my personal opinion, a big 80-20, and it's becoming just like an indispensable part of the podcaster's toolkit. And in fact, like content creators toolkit is Descript. So yeah, absolutely. I think most people here know what it is, right? But just in case anyone doesn't, it's basically like a Word doc editor. It just transcribes all your audio, and then you can just basically edit it as if you're editing a Word doc, and it just removes the audio parts of the words that you delete or you put in. And it's got a huge feature set, but it's really, really, well, I would say it used to be simpler. I think they made it more complicated with the latest release, but it's still, I think the thing is like, that tool is indispensable, I feel, and it's so powerful, and it makes life so much easier because it can do things like remove all your filler words in just a click of a button. So it will identify them, it'll underline them, see it nods head. I'm preaching to the converted here. So okay, we're all in on Descript, but I would say, if you can get, I think, at the bare minimum, if you can just get have an editor or a producer that is familiar with Descript, and you're able to collaborate, pretty much real time essentially, if you like. And you're able to just go in, add comments or async, just add comments and say, oh, add this, do this, and you can get a really great workflow going. We use it as part of our workflow. We don't actually, and this is a bit going into kind of some of how the sausage is made. We like to have a finer degree of control, and there is something about Descript. It's an amazing piece of software, but sometimes it gets a little bit glitchy, or like projects just go, and you're like, oh no, what happened? And I find that particularly happens when you have like separate tracks for each participant in the podcast. So when you're dealing with multi tracks, oftentimes it just goes a bit funky, especially if you have multiple people working on the same project, and things just going to go. Argh! So for that reason, and also just we just like to fine tune things, tweak things a little bit, because we're audiophiles in the podcasting space. Yeah, so we basically use something called Reaper. It's like one of these many doors. There's Audacity, there's Hindenburg, plenty of great options. But again, I think if you just want to keep something simple and you don't like, you want damn good audio quality, but you're not it's like comes to a point where it's like diminishing returns, like finicking around. I think one of the things that people run into is like just getting too hung up on very, very small details that to the average listener don't really make a huge amount of difference. Yeah. So let me see. So we talked about team, talked a little about tools. I really feel like, Descript is really, once you start getting the hang of that, or your team does, then you're kind of 80-90% of the way there. Then there are other platforms that obviously there's a whole bunch of different hosting ones. I would say they're more, don't tell any hosting platform people I say this, but they're more or less all the same. Like, you'll do the same thing. It's like web hosting. I mean, some have like as well bells and whistles and things like that. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, a question that I have to ask
Okay.
for you: what is your project management tool?
I use ClickUp.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I have to ask that to all of our hosts. To all of our Ticker Talk now, because I'm collecting what you're using. What is best practices, or like top 3 things that I think can set you aside or set you apart as a host and a guest?
So when you say host and guest, you mean as a host of
a podcast?
Or as a guest on other podcasts? Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So what can set you apart? How do you set yourself apart? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think what I would say as a host, okay, and this is really freaking hard. I'm terrible at this. It's just listening and being present. I suck at this. Ask my wife. And it is really a damn like a skill. Some people are born with it. They're great listeners. And yeah, just others, it just does not come naturally. I have to record and transcribe. I use all these Fathoms and your Fireflies and all this stuff because I forget things and and there's so many things that I miss. And so I love going back on all recordings and conversations I've had because I've just got too many things going on in my brain. I'm maybe a bit ADHD. Don't really want to get diagnosed. A bit scared of what might come out of that.
A little neurospicy here.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it.
Yeah. But if I know that maybe you're looking for quicker fire responses than this, but I do want to.
No, that's good.
If I could tell like a brief story about one of the clients, one of the people we work with, who did this so well, and it was really interesting because he. Okay, so basically, his show, it didn't have his audience was minuscule. But he was basically using the show for business development. He was using it as a means to get to know the people that he wanted, basically ideal, huge enterprise level clients, founders of Fortune 500 companies, Inc. 5000, fastest growing and so on. And so his podcast format was basically one question, just one question. That was it. One question. He figured out this question that he felt that really helped him create a really great bond between himself and the guest, and he knew it was something that was catchy and that people were interested in answering. And so, do you want to hear the question?
Yes.
I wasn't expecting anyone to shake their heads. I'm just curious.
We're like, we are listening.
So his question was, he was basically he was like, okay, if you could give gratitude or thanks to someone in your life that you feel like you haven't given enough gratitude or thanks to, who would that be? And people love this question because especially these people who most times when they're brought on a show, they're asked about how did you raise all your money? How did you scale? How did you grow your company and this and that? And they don't really care. They just want to talk about their mummy and daddy issues and their mentors and these people that meant so much to them. And so what this host, like, what Chris would do is he would just kind of go, yeah, okay, great. We've got all these people in the, okay, I've got this interview coming up, 5 minutes before. I goes to the LinkedIn, like check a little bit about their bio, some interesting details. But that was it, like minimal, didn't really have to do a great ton of research. Goes into the interview, asks the same question every damn episode. The listeners must be like, really? Same question, Chris? But the guests, they love the experience because they tell their story. And then at the end of that story, it's always like this massively long pause. And it's like a super long, awkward pause, and which Chris is just like totally comfortable with. And he just tries to see how long he can stretch it. And then he asks the best follow-up questions. And he listens. He just listens. And he just asks really amazing follow-up questions. And at the end of the show, basically the guests love it because this content is really, really important. Even if like hardly anyone listens to it, it's one of the most valuable things in their lives because they just told their uncle or their mother or their lifelong family friend how much they really meant to them. And it's a gift to that person. So it's one of these things that's, no, like who hardly anyone listens to the show, to be honest, but it really achieves his aims and his goals. It's just a really interesting way of looking at podcasting differently. I think some people don't always think about too much. Yeah. Oh, so that's the host side. On the guest side.
I love that though. But thank you for the story because now we will remember it.
Yeah.
Power of storytelling. Yes. And for the guests, right? What is something that you can do to set yourself apart as a guest, especially with hosts that are, it's like, oh, like I can get you booked in 2024, right? Like that type of deal, right? So. As this is being done today in 2023 for anyone listening to this later on the TikToks. Yeah. So how do you set yourself apart?
Yeah, I have a whole I have a whole sort of laundry list of different things you can do to really set yourself apart and really have a great experience as a guest. So we do podcast launch services, but we also help people guest on shows. And one of the ways that we help, we basically do research for our guests to basically identify. So I think a lot of the time, people go, okay, here's a podcast. I'm going to guest on it. Oh, they've chosen me. That's great. I'm going to go on. I'm going to talk about my thing and how it relates to the audience or the general theme of the show. Okay, fine, great. I think you can go a level or two deeper than that. And that's where you're basically looking at subtopics and sub-themes that keep on reappearing in the podcast that may not be in the title or maybe not even in the description. But if you listen to a couple of episodes, you probably pick them up. So one of my favorite shows is Tropical MBA. It's a business podcast, so one of many. It's very much sort of oriented towards digital nomadism, location independence, lifestyle entrepreneurship, bootstrapping. So those are all kind of, the general themes that you probably find within the description. But if you listen to more than a couple of episodes, you keep hearing them talk about productized services, or kind of this lingo that's kind of like the listener lingo. And so if you can basically, pick up on some of those subtopics. So that's one, productized services. It's basically a way of packaging your services into a nice little kind of serial box that people can go, okay, this is what I'm getting. The scope is very clear and so on. Another one might be solving for the knowledge gap versus the efficiency gap, where the knowledge gap is like where you have to educate your potential customers, and that requires a lot of effort. And is that what you're trying to do? You're trying to teach them a new method, or are you just trying to basically say, hey, we'll get you to your goal cheaper, quicker? Basically that's the efficiency. You're solving for the efficiency gap. You're helping people get to their objectives quicker. So there's basically all these different kind of concepts that they bring up on the show, and they bring them up time and time again. And they're really, really great topics and themes that people have really interesting discussions about. And so if you can identify what those are and see if you're able to bring a new slant or a different take on those subtopics, like you'll have a great conversation. You have an amazing conversation, and it will stick in people's minds. They'll go, every single time they think about the efficiency gap, they go, oh yeah, but Juliana, she was talking about how the way that we always think about operations and scaling, we're doing it all wrong. But specifically within this area that she touched on. I think that's a way to really kind of stick in people's minds, but actually bring value, actually bring something to the table that's of use to the listener. It's the host freaking loves it. They're like, great. So yeah, that's
you get into the subconscious of the podcast.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna open this up to everybody else, and Melinda already had a question in the chat, which was she's been chatting it up. Which is, what is the best tool for researching podcasts to appear on?
It's a great question.
As you notice, we're very techie here.
Yeah. Okay, so we did some research around this. So when we look at helping people place people as guests on the show, they're basically, I would say, there are lots of different ways of going about this. I would say, platform wise, so there are basically these sort of guest host matchmaking kind of services. And there are a bunch of them. There's Matchmaker, there's podcasts. I'm forgetting all the names. But there's one in particular that does an excellent job. I will be honest, the name is kind of escaping. I know the name of the founder is Alex. I'm gonna actually look this up live, so do bear with me.
Yeah, go for it. And then if I can bug you for some resources afterwards, we'll put it with your Tinker Talk. That way people can go to that, even though. Yeah,
it's just so the thing with a lot of these matchmaking services is they're like spam fests, most of them. Oh, it's just people just going, and now it's even worse than ChatGPT. People just and so the hosts just get inundated. They're just, it's just if you want to.
Oh yeah, and they have nothing to do with you'd be shocked. Yeah, I mean you're not shocked. I mean I must get 10 of these a week.
Yeah, of course. And they just get bombarded with billions of these pitches. That is the problem with most of these podcast directories, and it's kind of a numbers game, really. As when you're on the other side, it's just just keep trying, and every single time there's a new show, grab them, or try and figure out some way of, kind of playing around with the algorithm. But there is one platform that does things a little bit differently, and they deliberately limit the amount of shows you can actually approach. And they do it does a really good job of basically removing all the noise, and so you're just left with signal, really. People, so they basically, they basically show you a subset of shows that are more suited for, basically your profile and so forth. And so they just do a better job of just limiting the noise, and it's just way more signal, and it's a better experience on both sides. And I know that I can't remember for the life of me what the name of this platform is. Oh yeah, no, I've got it. It's okay. Okay. Oof.
We got it.
Yeah, I got it. Oh my god, found it. Okay, so it is. Oh man, I think they've even changed their name. No.
Maybe they're redirecting their URL so that maybe.
Oh my lord. Wait, I've got it. Okay. Oh, Alex, why do you make things? Oh no, actually, they have. Yeah, so it used to be called Podmatch. Let me double check. I think he's kind of, so it is still Podmatch. Yeah, it is still Podmatch. It seems as though he's also just kind of moving into other areas with different kinds of services as well. But yeah, Podmatch, fantastic service. I highly recommend checking it out.
Alex Sanfilippo.
Yeah, and actually, there's a really great video on YouTube where someone's basically done, and we kind of did this ourselves as well, where someone just kind of went, okay, he basically tracked all the data. He was like, how many shows have I reached out to? What was the response rate? you know, and just kind of boom, 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 matchmaker, tried all of them, and Pub Match was amazing. I also, I think also with podcasting, like one of the best things you could do as well is just network with other people who are, you know, in similar shoes. Like I got to know this chap quite well, who he's guested on like hundreds, thousands of shows, and he's like one of the top people on Matchmaker. But he's all over it. Once he found out about Pod Match, he was like converted instantly. He was like all over it.
A good thing you said something, because the number 2 response with that name is a Reddit thread where the guy's claiming it's a scam, although he replies and kind of addresses it. So I would have been funny about, you know, I would have hesitated if it had not been for your review. So there you go.
Yay.
There are, so can I, yeah, so yeah, I appreciate that. And to be honest, you know, that's just my opinion, and you know, by all means, you know, there's no reason why you can't just put yourself on all of them. I mean, why not just put yourself on all of them and test things out?
One person, I only have so much time, so I need a couple places to start. I mean, this is, it's worth starting and seeing.
So once you put up one profile page, it's not that hard to just take pretty much the same data and plonk it on another one of these platforms. They're all more or less, you know, just kind of more or less the same.
Yeah.
So that is kind of like, if you're a host, you're looking for guests, and guests are looking for hosts, and you want to do it just through this very low touch kind of marketplace thing. I would say that approach, you don't necessarily get shows that are like super targeted. They tend to be a little bit more generic in most cases, not all the time. Sometimes you do find some gems, and I wouldn't say, you know, they tend to be not the biggest shows. As you can find some good shows. You find some shows that are like but slightly more variable in quality. You're going to have this like variability. I would say if you want to be more targeted, there are other platforms. There's one in particular, which is called podcasthawk.com. This is a platform where it basically allows you to do more of the kind of the cold outreach approach. So this is where you're basically setting up campaigns. You determine like what sort of parameters you want the shows that you're approaching to fall into. I think their homepage doesn't do a brilliant job of actually explaining the product. I think it's like if you actually go down into, it's like one of their feature pages that actually gives you a better actually just show you like the back end, what it looks like. It's much it's not very helpful, is it? But basically what the back end is like essentially it allows you to filter what kinds of shows you're looking for, what category and so on. And basically they've scraped like all the podcasts. And there are a couple of other, you know, platforms that have databases like this. There's like Listen Notes, there's Podchaser. And they're okay. But the thing that sets this one apart is that every single time you set up an outreach campaign, before you send your campaign, they have sort of like their version of Amazon Turk in the back end that checks every single show to verify that every email is correct. Because a lot of what these directors are doing is they're just going like, what's the email address in the RSS feed? The RSS feed is like the gobbledygook that you know, it's just basically a web address that you send off to Apple Podcasts when you submit your show, but it contains a lot of the information about, it gets updated every single time you have a new episode. It kind of just tells Apple Podcasts, where does the audio for this live? But it includes your email address that you submit with the RSS.
I use Podchaser. They're expensive. I mean, relatively expensive. They're like $3,000 or $4,000 a year. I just don't think we put enough effort into it. But yeah, I'm familiar with that platform. It is pretty high end, and there is a lot of good analytics that they make available. And the reason they do this is because people scrape them. You have to pay, because if you didn't, people would pay $50 and then they'd scrape all the data and then they'd be dead. So it's but it is interesting to see what they had and the research there.
Yeah, I still feel that I think, you know, all these databases are getting better over time. The ones that have been around the longest are probably some of the more accurate. But this is, again, you know, Podchaser, I would still recommend Podcast Hawk over it, because they have this Amazon Turk thing on the back end at the end. So even if the email address is wrong, you'll have someone who like goes out and double checks it for you, goes to their website, etc., to make sure you actually are emailing a real human being that's behind the show. and not something that's just like defunct or whatnot. And they're constantly improving that database as well. Yeah.
And would you say they have the best analytics because of that, because there's humans attached to the analytics, or like, I know it's such a weird, like, yes, that's what I mean, right? Because analytics needs to be curated one way or the other, or do you have another place that you like better for analytics?
Yeah. Okay. So the verification that's going on is more around like just the data, like
Human?
the contact details behind the show.
Okay.
But these guys, they do some stuff around analytics. Analytics with podcasting is like, it's a black box most of the time. It's like how much, there are some things you can do. To ascertain like what really the real audience behind the show is not what they tell you. But at the end of the day, it is really the podcast hosts that have that information, and only the hosts. Podcast hosting companies that provide those analytics to their to their users, to the podcast host people. So it's only really them that have that level of access. That's really kind of the real deal. And just most people just don't show those numbers in general. But some things you can do to verify this. This only really works for shows over a certain threshold. But there are some platforms that will tell you how many followers and subscribers publicly. They will give this information publicly. Does a show have? So Castbox is one of them. There are a couple of others, and I'll show you. There is a tool. Refonic is another one of these platforms. It's like a database of sorts that also people use to determine, okay, what's the list of shows that we want to do campaigns or outreach to. But they have a couple of like really neat tools. And this one is basically just lets you go like, oh, how many subscribers and followers does a podcast have, and all the apps that actually give this information publicly. Not all apps do, but some do, like Castbox and so forth. So giving name a podcast. Favorite podcast, anybody?
Anybody, shoot it out.
Yeah, your podcast.
Well, sure, why not? Staying Alive in Tech, that's my podcast.
Stand Alive in Tech, did I get that?
Stayin. Stayin, like the song, Stayin'
Like
Alive.
Staying alive.
No G. No G. No
Duh.
G. There it is. Staying Alive in Tech, that one.
Okay,
Second
great.
one, number 2.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is it. I mean, a little bit disappointing here, but it's okay.
Yes, disappointing is a good word. I appreciate that. Because I'm a couple months from, I haven't done an episode. So it turns out Podmatch won't even let me on as a host because I haven't done an episode in 2 months. But
no.
It's all right. I've got a plan. But anyway, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So why is it showing like they have no subscribers? Surely you have some subscribers, and you do. It's just they're not on these apps. And to be honest, like if we look at the amount of consumption,
if you looked at my profile on Libsyn, each episode gets about 300 downloads. I've had some as high as 2,000. Yeah. Too small.
Your followers and subscribers, they're probably following on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and maybe a multitude of other apps. They're just not within these. But this is the thing. This is why I said that it requires a certain threshold of audience before these numbers actually start to make sense to anyone. But you can, once you do get a show that has an audience level where you do start to see numbers here, then you can start extrapolating that. You can go, well, we know that on average, okay, so there's some figures around this. You know what? I might.
Well, did you have a podcast you want to search, or did you have a question next?
Yes, I was wondering if we could search for this podcast called The Invisible Profession.
The Invisible Profession, yeah. Sure thing.
It's like this called The Invisible Profession, a podcast by Linguava.
Yeah.
Let's see if it hits the threshold.
Yeah. Actually, let me just. Sorry about this. I'm just moving a couple of screens about. Okay. So, did you put it in the chat? Sorry. Oh, I see.
Invisible
Profession.
The Invisible Profession.
In the meantime, I'll also put the Ramit Sethi one that Mark typed in. Let's do that. Oh, that's not what I was looking for. Let's see. Go back to the chat. Pull up the chat window. Here we go. I will teach you to be rich. Ramit Sethi. Anybody who have we got any fans of Ramit Sethi in the house?
Yeah, we like him.
Yeah, I think he's a cool dude.
Yeah, I've also been following his wife's Instagram lately.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she's got good Instagram game, has she?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, yeah. So this is a good example. So yeah, we can start seeing numbers here. We can say, okay, 12.4K followers in Castbox. That's considerable. And then I think the thing is like once you sorry, and so if I just bear with me. Okay, so this is just like a useful thing I have around, podcast trends and just nice stats and pretty figures and things. But here you can actually see, okay, so this is Libsyn's figures. Like Libsyn is one of the biggest hosts. It's actually, I think Castbox, not Castbox, Buzzsprout has surpassed them, but they are one of the biggest hosts. And so what they're seeing and their download figures, they're seeing that most people are consuming via Apple Podcasts, and we've got Spotify, So you see, okay, Castbox has 1.3% of downloads. So we can sort of roughly infer that if we look at, this number, we can basically do the math to figure out, okay, well, if basically just over 1% of listenership is coming from this app, then how many subscribers and followers will they have on Apple Podcasts and all that sort of thing? And then you can start sort of seeing these. It's not going to be perfect. Some shows will have, for whatever reason, they'll have more followers on one platform than the other. Also, those platforms, they also incentivize some of the bigger shows to use, to basically, if they want to get featured and placement and stuff like that, they say, oh, you have to send all your people to our show. You have to place that prominently on your website. So it's not perfect, but it's one of the ways that you can get a sense of audience size. I think there's also things like, you can take SEO metrics. So you can go like, what's the domain authority of a site? And you can determine and it's not necessarily so much about audience size, but it's more about, are they legit really?
Mm-hmm.
And a good backlink from a website with, good domain authority is, going to help you with search rankings and things like that. So don't forget about that. I've got a couple should I try a couple of these other ones? Are you still curious? Should we do that?
Oh, yeah, we'll do one more and then
we'll
see other questions.
Okay, which one do you want to do?
Let's do the invisible profession.
Okay, sounds good. And okay, so there we go. No, nothing there. I want to show you something else though, like a Refonic tool. This is refonic.com/graph. This one was basically podcast follower, subscribe. You just Google subscribers, subscriber tool Refonic. But this one is refonic.com/graph. And what is freaking cool about this is it shows you your podcast neighborhood. So it goes like, okay, here's a show. People who listen to this show, they also listen to the Daily, they listen to the Medical Spanish podcast, and we could go in here and we go, how about the Ear Hustle? Let's see that graph. So basically it gives you these degrees of separation in terms of listenership. It goes like, okay, people who listen to Ear Hustle, listen to American Life, who listen to the Daily and so forth. And so you can kind of see like, it's a kind of a nice constellation of your podcast neighborhood. And so this is a good way of just finding, if you're like, oh, I need to guest on shows, I want to guest on shows that are like this one, or I want to, that I want to find people who also listen to these kind of shows, and what other shows do they listen to as well, and you kind of find all this other stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. What this is all based on, all this data is basically the same thing that you would see in Apple Podcasts, where it says people who listen to the show also listen to. That's all it's actually, but it's pretty funky stuff. It's pretty handy.
I love that.
Yeah.
Me loves a good mind map visualization.
Yeah, it's sexy too.
Like, ooh, good job visualization.
And free. It's like free. Free's great.
Free is great. Anybody else have any other questions? Both on hosting, guesting, and then Jessica's part of brokering. So any
do you want me to just kind of dig out one of these questions and that I'm seeing in the chat and see if I can?
Yeah, I know Melinda had another question.
Yeah, Melinda, you're just on fire today. What's going on here?
Well, I came with an agenda, so I don't go to meetings.
She's relaunching. She's like, we're going back. Well, not relaunching, but
I had plans for the podcast anyway for AI. Yeah. So the season 4 is going to be all about AI. So
yes, talking about AI.
We're going to have a bunch. I'm already lining up the speakers, so it's coming. So, and again, if nobody has any other questions, I didn't want to dominate the conversation, so I will yield the floor.
Go. You have
So
permission.
I have 53 episodes,
Mhm.
which is my understanding is most podcasts never get past 10.
Yeah.
So, and more to come. I never have any trouble getting people to come on the podcast, probably for the reasons you were describing, because every time people are on the podcast, they're like, that was so much fun, because it's just, we listen and we have a good conversation, and the business I've gotten from it is tremendous.
Awesome.
It's amazing. Just
Yeah.
from doing the interviews, because people like you, because you really care about them. You're really trying to get to know them.
Yeah.
Point being, I have specialized in long form. So I have almost all of these interviews are are an hour or longer. So I have lots of juicy snack content. And I have been trying to figure out a couple of things. One is monetization, because given that these have a long tail and these are some prominent, these are people with a lot of experience. I think I actually did Tom Peters's last podcast interview before he retired. And so I've been thinking about, well, what can I do to monetize easily? Again, I'm one person right now. And then the second is, I know about tools like Audiogram, but the single most time-consuming part of creating the podcast is the person who listens to the transcript and figures out what really matters from a promotion standpoint and writes the landing page. So those are two questions built into one. One is monetization, but the other is what are some ways we can tighten up the post-production time for landing pages and promotional content. Wow,
Okay.
sorry.
Can you tell me just a little bit more about those landing pages, just so I understand? What are those landing pages?
So we have a website called, Stay Alive in Tech. We publish on Libsyn, so we embed the podcast there. And then we obviously have the episode page that has, a summary of what's in there. It has links, that kind of stuff. And then we try to cross-link. You get the idea.
Yeah. Okay, so show notes page for each.
Show notes. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I've got a memory of a goldfish. So first part of the question.
Well, the first part of the question was monetization. When you're small, because if you're not, if you're Tim Ferriss, that'd be easy.
Yeah.
Because think about my target audience is actually high net worth, right? These are people who care about listening to the people who are made the history in Silicon Valley. And so generally these are people that are gonna, they're gonna be executives, they're gonna be senior folks who are likely to spend money on things. And it struck me that even though it's a small audience, it's a targeted one. And it's international. It's surprisingly, I'm an American, so it's amazing to me how many countries people listen to this in. It blows my mind.
Yeah. Your show is like, the topic is it?
It's technically an oral history of Silicon Valley.
Right.
So talking to people who were there, why, like one of the creators of Gopher, Internet Protocol, the person who invented the term virtual reality.
Yeah.
And so how did we get here? How did these things happen? How is trust and safety created?
Yeah. I don't want to just end up just asking more questions.
It's okay.
But I just some sort of lines of inquiry I'd probably look into is like, okay, just understand more about your business model and how your show could like augment that business model for you. Is it a way that you can like develop partnerships?
Sure. From a relationship standpoint.
Yeah. So in that case,
that's nothing. But I was just curious if there's a way to create passive revenue, even when possibly. That's all I was just asking. Is it even possible, or do you really have to have a threshold?
So here's the thing. I think small shows can be monetized. Small audiences can. I wouldn't say to be honest, I'm not like a massive expert on this. I think you had Jeremy Enns, and he did a really good. I can't remember if it was like a course or something like that, but it was specifically around that, how to monetize like really small audiences, and he was able to.
I will go seek him out. Thank you. Perfect.
There's another example that comes to mind. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, talk, right?
Yeah, he did a Tinker Talk, and I'm about to grab his course information, so I'll make sure to deliver that as well in the Tinker Talk for everybody else, and I'll send it to you, Melinda.
Yeah. So we can move on past that. I trust you.
Well, yeah, okay, but Jeremy Enns, definitely check out his stuff. Jeremy Enns is like podcast marketing guru, like fucking amazing. I love his stuff. Definitely recommend checking his stuff. Another chap, another case study which is interesting. The chap called Harry Duran. So Harry Duran he also has a podcast agency of his own. And one of the things that he did, and this is more about, so it's monetizing a small show, but it's a new show where it's a show where basically he identified, he went, okay, what's a new trend that I'm noticing? What he kind of follows like the trends newsletter.
Mhm.
So he was like, what's a trend that's kind of all over the place, and like there's loads of funding rounds and this and that, but there's no content. There's like there's just no content channels around it. And so he picked one, which was vertical farming. So he has the Vertical Farming podcast, where he interviews CEOs of vertical farming companies and people in the industry and stuff like that. He secured, I can't remember exactly how much, it was like in the tens of thousands of dollars before ever launching anything, before even having an audience or anything. He managed to kind of secure like an exclusive partnership with, sponsor, basically read them out before the show and so on. So there's an example, but I feel like that's that's where he's been very strategic about his approach. He's kind of gone, okay, I'm going to do my research and go in a very, very specific niche.
I see what I'm picking up what you're putting down.
The money is,
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I've been thinking my network is so, it blows people's minds. Like they're like, how do you get these people? And it's like,
So in your case, if there may be a way of applying this, and obviously easier said than done, but like, is there any way that maybe you could sort of like, do like specific series around, certain topics or things like that? And I think actually a lot of it is like speaking to some of the guests that come on your show and actually talking to them about that and saying, like, let's see, actually looking at some of their content channels or the way, or what they're trying to push, or what kind of initiatives are they actually investing? Where's the money flowing? Just follow the money. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you.
Could you do a branded series? Just like maybe it's like 10 episodes. It's like, cool, we're doing this in partnership with XYZ, and we're going to go deep on this specific, vertical or something like that.
Love it. Perfect. I'll lead you. And so second question, unless somebody's thought of something. Oh, Williams, I want to yield the floor. I'll ask you sideline. I don't want to. I see Williams' hand up.
It's one question I have is, so I wanted to start a podcast for a while. I think it would be great for business development, but it just seems very like complex in terms of projects and what I have to do. So what would be kind of recommendation on that? Like, what would be the kind of simple setup that one might start on doing podcasts without kind of going too overboard?
I love this question. Okay. So as a business owner, you're busy, you got shit going on, you got no time, you don't really have that much time for these piddly podcast things, right? So I think if you want to dip your toe in the podcasting waters, but you just like, you don't have enough time to commit to, doing a show for eternity and so on, it might be good for content marketing, but it still is a bit of a risk and it's investment. It's like, oh, so I have one or two recommendations around this. The first one is thinking about podcast guesting prior to actually launching your own show, just in order to get familiar with the medium. Actually, maybe even build up a network of other hosts that might be willing to promote your show if you do eventually launch, that you call on, that have an audience of podcast listeners that are also your ideal listeners as well. And it's just a good way of getting familiar with the media and so on. So podcasting guesting is usually the place where I suggest people start getting comfortable in the microphone. Okay, is this a medium that really suits me? Is interview style really my thing? Do I find chemistry? The odds, like we've kind of discussed before, are a little bit stacked against you in terms of like actually securing a place on a show. That's where I usually recommend that people just start with their networks and kind of go, okay, who in my network is guesting on a shit ton of shows? Kind of just reach out to them and say, hey, I love your last appearance on blah blah blah, or I noticed you're all over the place, man. I'd love to have a chat, and see if there's any way I can, I'd love to pick, kind of pick brain if that's okay, or I'd love to, give you some feedback on your latest episode or something like that. Just find something to, be nice to them, just be a normal human being, friendly person, have a chat with them and see if actually they would be willing to recommend you as a guest on the next show that they appear on. Because 9 times out of 10, And I'm guessing, you know, Melinda, you've probably done this. Like at the end of the interview, you go, oh, so you know Bill Gates, it was great having you on. Bill, do you know any really good people I should have on this show?
Oh God, totally.
Like, yeah, he'd be like, well, who are you looking for? And he'd be like, oh, well, you know, these kinds of people. And I'd be like, yeah, you should probably speak to this. Well, you see, William, if you're a mate, let's call him, I don't know, Steve or Jill or something. If Jill gets to the end of the interview and, you know, if they ask that question, they'll be like, oh, well, speak to William. He's a real expert in
translation. Sure.
There we go. Exactly.
Whatever.
You know?
Well, but you have to ask them on the air, because they almost always
Yeah.
stay on afterwards after you say no, and you just thank them, and then you say, is there anybody else that you recommend? And oh, there's one other thing I want to say is always ask the guest. I had like same 3 ending questions, and we use those to pull out content, like what's the best advice you've ever been given, you know, that kind of stuff. So that has pulled out the most amazing quotes for social media, is to ask things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could, so awesome. So, okay, we were kind of, so it seems like we're more or less on the same page about this podcast guesting thing. I know it's not for everybody, but, you know, for some people, okay, great. You know, that's a good way of getting to in different order. The next sort of thing I might also offer up as a suggestion to consider is, I think a lot of us, we have this like preconception of like, okay, a podcast must be an interview show that we do forever. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. It can be, you know, and then it's like, oh no, if you stop after 10 episodes, it's the worst thing in the world. And it's like, no, it's not. Has anybody listened to a show called Startup School by Seth Godin? I know I've mentioned this to you, Mark. Does anyone else? Okay,
yes,
so,
I think I've like.
Okay, how many episodes was that? It was like what, 15? I think it was.
Yeah.
And it was from a seminar that you delivered during the course of a week, and you know, a couple of hours long, and the audio quality is fucking awful. Does it matter? No, because it's Seth Godin at the top of his game. It's his best stuff. Well, I mean, Seth Godin is pretty, you know, you just blabber on about everything. People are like, oh, that's amazing. But it was a pretty amazing show. And it can, to this day, the last episode he published of that show was back in like 2013, 14. People still listen to that show. They still talk about it. They re-listen to that show. They binge it. And I think that's the thing. You don't need to do this show that lasts forever and takes you forever and schedule these interviews. No, you just need to sit down in front of a microphone and just go like, okay, what's figure out, okay, is this going to be for brand awareness? Is it just going to like put footprint in podcasting? Is it just, are you going to just deliver this really valuable piece of content? People remember you, and then they'll try and, I listened to the Seth Godin Startup School. I didn't know anything about Seth Godin. I was like, who is this guy? And then I actually learned, oh, he's an author. Oh, he has these books. But I discovered him through podcasting. And so that was like his footprint. Now your objectives may be a little bit different. So like maybe it's just like, you know what, I just need more leads, you know, I want to get people into my kind of content ecosystem. So this is where, if that's the case, then I might think about, okay, is there a very specific problem that your target, you know, client or, you know, whoever it is that you're trying to reach, your listener, is facing, that you can really just do like a 10-step like episode series, sequential, where they'll listen to one episode and then go, okay, what do I need to do next? Okay, what do I need to do next? What do I need? And then by the time you get to the very last episode, they're like, what do I do next? And you tell them what to do next. You go on my webinar, like download this PDF, you know, join my email list, book a call, whatever it may be. But the chances of them doing that after you've brainwashed them for 10 hours is much higher than what most people do, is where they just go they go as a guest on a show and they go, oh, at the end, the interviewer, you know, Melinda might go, well, you know, William, tell us, you know, where can we find out more about you? Oh, go to my website, download this thing. No one ever does that. And also you're basically competing with all the hundreds of other guests on the show. But if you said, well, actually, I have a 10-episode series on fixing this particular problem, which we briefly mentioned on the episode. If you're challenged for that, I highly recommend going through that. It will help you get through the initial steps. It will teach you this and that. And the thing is, people forget about this, but when listeners come to the end of their episode, they're like, the first thing they're looking for is like, well, what the fuck do I listen to next? What do I put in my queue? And so if you can give them that option, you bring them into your content ecosystem, then you brainwash them for 10 hours, and then they're way more likely to go and do what you want them to go and do. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, but it's to me, that's just it's such a no-brainer. It's like, it's not going to take you a huge amount of time because you already have everything you need. You have the expertise. You've been doing what you've been doing for donkey's years. I know some people, there are some people who find it a little bit difficult to just get on a microphone and talk by themselves, like, oh, this kind of feels flat. I don't have anyone to bounce ideas or chemistry off. So another thing that some people do, a good example of this is Sales Marketing Profit, Taki Moore and James Schramko. Basically like two kind of coach of coaches type people. One is like a coach for like sort of services businesses, and the other one is like coach for coaches. And anyway, they did this co-hosted show where they basically took different case studies of like people they worked with, and then one would talk about it and the other person would ask questions, and they had this kind of chemistry back and forth. Again, this is one of these shows that like did a limited amount of episodes. I think they went into like 30 episodes where they stopped, but it's like one that's continually referred to. And I discovered Taki Moore. I never heard of this Taki Moore guy. I was like, I don't care about coach of coaches. I'm a services business, but I want to find out about all James Schramko. I came across it because I was looking for James Schramko content. So I started listening to the show, and then I was like, oh my God, this Taki Moore guy, he's a bit of a lunatic, but he's really amazing. He's got all these cool frameworks. And now I'm on his list and everything. And I see Taki Moore on my Instagram feed every single freaking day. So that's,
yes. And on your inbox every single freaking day.
Yeah. But I love his emails because they're just like one sentence.
They're bite sized.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, amazing.
Just a quick question, Jonathan, because I want to be considerate of your time. Do you have a hard stop, or can you have 1 minute left? Okay.
No. I think I do have to be downtown for. Actually, no. You know what? I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I don't have a hard stop. Yeah.
Okay. I want to be respectful. But I know that we had like 2 or 3 more questions. Yeah. And I had a question.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna get my question first, because I'm the host. So, okay. So we don't like the Yeti. What do we like? So talk to me about setup, technical setup, like favorite mic. Do we want lighting? If you're going to repurpose for video, green screen, like what are your like minimal viable setup to like, ooh, I got some money to burn. It's end of the year. I'm going to tax write off this shit setup. Right. So, so I would love kind of like minimal, like, because if you're starting out, you're like, all right, whatever, I'm just gonna do this and do that. But then so faves for setup.
So it's interesting because like when I deal with clients, I suppose there are a couple of different, one is the budget side of things, how much do you want to spend? You can spend as much as you like or as little as you want. But then there's also like technical proficiency, or like just minimizing the amount of things that could possibly go wrong as well. And actually, like some of my clients, I think most of the people here are pretty technically proficient, but like with my clients, sometimes I just like try and give them the most, just things that just can't go wrong, basically. But I would say, so from the minimal side of things, I actually do this myself. So when I'm on the go, I don't want to lug a heavy podcast mic around. And so what I'll generally do is I'm a fan of like the and some audiophiles will probably kill me for saying this, but like I'm actually a big fan of the kind of call center headsets. With just like the mouthpiece, because again, this is the thing, exactly. So Melinda is, perfect case study. This is fantastic.
I just posted a link in the chat. I had this headset's predecessor for 7 years. It costs $130. I record the podcast with it.
Yeah.
And it's wired. I will say the difference is it's a USB. So as a result, you get higher quality, and the noise cancellation is astonishing on it.
Yeah. USB is fine. I actually, so yes, absolutely. Great.
And which one do you have, Jonathan?
So these are like a pair of like Hewlett Packard, and the thing is they're pretty minimal and they're in ear. So I like what Melinda has, but I have a problem with sometimes when the other person's audio is shitty, I can't hear them with those cans. if I'm like in an environment where there's stuff going on. And so I use these for, calls and everything, but I also, if
typically not in a noisy environment. Yeah.
If I have to take a podcast interview on the go, then I'll basically use it. So basically what it is it's just like these in-ear things with like just this is actually detachable, this mic.
Do you have a link for that?
This one is actually out of production at the moment. But it's like $20. So there's an alternative, which I got another one, mainly just because like one of the earbuds actually just came off and I just lost it. I don't know where it is. And they kind of got funny fitting ones. So I need to go and find where the replacements are. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the call center things. Actually, if, going back to like that chap, Chris, like the crazy genius person. No problem if people have to leave, by the way. See, Jessica had to hop off. That's totally cool. But what Chris used to do, see you, Mark, is basically he used to have like this big headset that I was just like, why the fuck are you using that, Chris? And he was like, and he would give his guests one of these big headsets. They're just like, and just kind of things that you see broadcasters use. I was like, why the fuck are you using that, Chris? Like, why don't you just use like a decent microphone that plug into an audio interface, whatever? And he was like, yeah, I guess I could. It's just like, I want to be like the voice of God, and I don't want anybody to hear anything else. And it just doesn't go wrong. You just plug it in. There's not that much. The mic is in the right place, and all they can hear is you and no one else. And also, he does it he prefers to do it on client side because he likes to meet people and shake their hands and so sometimes it will be like they can't find a good recording environment, so they'll be like recording in a stairwell or something. That's actually happened. So that's just the way. He just has these things that you can just pretty much use anywhere, and it will give him good audio quality, and he sounds like the voice of God in their ears.
I love that.
Yeah. It's kind of on the higher end, then there's the Shure SMB7, the kind of Michael Jackson podcast microphone. There are variations on that. There's like a more portable version of that does like both. I think the SMB7, like the classic one, is just like XLR only. Then they've got a new one that's like XLR and USB. I would say though, the difference between like a $600 to $1,000 microphone versus like an ATR 2000, this is like a $60 microphone. And if I'm perfectly honest, I kind of feel like I should get a SMB7 because then people go, oh, you're legit, like you're a pro. But if I'm honest, in terms of audio quality, you can't really tell much of the difference unless you're just like 0.01% person in the world that just does nothing but listen to audio all day in like as a sound engineer or something like that. Dynamic microphone are good. I really have a thing against Blue Yeti. There's I don't know why it's so ubiquitous. I'm sorry, Juliana. I'm not trying to.
No, you're good. You're good. It was actually Mark's fault, so we can blame him. Yeah, I think. Okay, cool. And anything with, and then Melinda had a question about video versus audio. I think. I'll let you ask your question, and then I'll let everybody go.
We've been entirely audio. However, I'm migrating some things into my products where I'm going to be on video more. As you can see, I've got my setup going here, plant and everything, and trying to figure out like a couple subdivided questions. Should I take the podcast and duplicate it on video with titles like you see on YouTube? That's question number one. And number two, am I missing something or missing out on something by not doing them on video, knowing that I think I do better on audio because I can close my eyes, as I said? That's how I'm able. By the way, as a fellow ADHDer, I don't know if you didn't have a chance to see the chat, but I spent a lot of time listening to Larry King, and I saw there's a great podcast called The Turnaround where they interview interviewers. I love it. Yeah. And his is amazing.
Really?
And he talks about how he used to do all this preparation for these interviews, and he does not. And what he does is he listens.
Yeah.
And it is such a powerful experience for me to close my eyes and listen to that person and look for the hitch in their voice, the thing that makes me go, that's the path I want to go down. That's the question. That's the thing I want to inquire about. So that's my long-winded way of saying I like audio only. But if you're telling me I'm missing out something, I think it has to be more snack sized if it's on video. I don't think people sit still for an hour on video.
Yeah. Okay. I have very forceful opinions on this. I'm very much like in the audio.
I asked for them.
the audio boat. I'm not a big believer in long form video content. I just have not seen great results, from people I've worked with, or just just out in the wild and stuff like that. I think there are exceptions, the Joe Rogans and a couple of channels that just do really well as video podcasts, but they're far and few between, to be honest. I often really think that the amount of overhead, the extra overhead it takes to get, to be honest, to do a decent job of video, like you do need pretty good quality. Then you run into all this stuff around like editing the video, and then with all these jump cuts, and then the audio, and it's just like these huge file sizes and everything, and it's just I don't really. And the thing is like, if you compare consumption on video versus audio, thing is there's a huge drop off with video after the first couple of seconds, because there are all these different things, there's like ads and like other things taking their attention, and and thumbnails and everything going on, and there's so many distractions and so many things. Whereas audio, people, they're walking their dog, they're driving the car, they're washing the dishes, they're doing all these things. They can't do anything. They basically, you basically, when the majority of people who start listening to an audio podcast listen all the way through. There's also this kind of like weird thing about when you compare audio downloads versus like views on video, is it's comparing apples and oranges, because a listen on audio is at least 1 minute. It has to be at least 1 minute to count as a listen, like according to like the metrics that like the standards and everything that the IAB determine. Whereas with video, it's like the first 10 to something like first 10 or 20 seconds or something like that. So
thank you.
So it's like,
I'm an analyst. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So it's like, even when people compare these figures, which usually actually show that, it's just like you're not really comparing the same thing at all. So yeah, there's like 50 other reasons, but I know we're over time. I know we're busy people with businesses to run and things going on. So, but I really appreciate these questions. They've been fantastic. Yeah.
You've been very helpful.
Yeah.
Jonathan, thank you so much. I will send you access to the I already sent you access to the Ticker Talks. Everyone has access to the Ticker Talks. You'll be there. And then if you want to join us, you're more than welcome to. We will be having one on September 29th with Jamie Roberts, and she is going to be talking about managing creatives, because that is always a sticky situation when people have emotions, right? So how do we wrangle in the creative diva? So managing creatives is going to be a big deal. And then in October, we're going to talk about managing Gen Z with Danielle, who is a huge Gen Zer on LinkedIn. And she is going to talk to us about how to wrangle in Gen Z, if we have opinions about that too. So we're going to finish off Q4 with management. And that's all, folks. Thank you so much. Jonathan, I'm going to email you just to make sure that I've got like all the resources and stuff like that, and I'll stack in all your things in the Ticker Talk page. So I appreciate everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
Thank you. This was fun.
Wow. Yes, this was so much fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Cheers.